we have an opportunity. Here in Norway, you are, with God's blessing, you are well-to-do. But I'm sure in the families, many of our homes, maybe we are not hungry for a piece of bread, but maybe there is somebody there in the family who is unwanted, unloved, uncared, forgotten. There is love. Love begins at home. And love to be true has to hurt. I never forget the little child who taught me a very beautiful lesson. They heard in Calcutta, the children, that Mother Teresa has no sugar for her children. And this little one, Hindu boy, 4 years old, he went home and he told his parents, I will not eat sugar for 3 days. I will give my sugar to Mother Teresa. How much a little child can eat? After 3 days, they brought him to our house. And there was this little one who could scarcely pronounce my name. He loved with great love. He loved until it hurt. And this is what I bring before you. To love one another until it hurts. But don't forget that there are many children, many men and women who haven't got what you have. And remember to love them until it hurts.
Welcome to Hope. My name is Ben. I'm one of the pastors here. And this, I'm really excited about this, is my wife, Stephanie. Everybody say hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
So I wanted to give her a day off for Mother's Day, but Pastor Mike thought we should preach together. No, I'm just kidding. This is why I should stay on script. We are so honored to preach together today. As we talk about Mother's Day, as we talk about Acts, we talk about what God's doing in your life and what God has always done. God is doing amazing things. And he does amazing things especially through mothers. So thank you. Thank you, mothers. Thank you. I want to say hi, Mom, because she's watching on the internet from Colorado. Hi, Mom. Hi, Grandma. As we, is that funny? When we think about who we are, when I think about who I am, my mom is such a huge part of this. I want to read a text that is from my family text chain, and I didn't tell anybody I was doing this, so... Including me. Including Steph. This is what you get for texting me, and you might get it in a sermon. We're texting back and forth saying Happy Mother's Day, and my grandmother said this: I'm so proud to be the mother of so many wonderful people who really make a difference in this old world. Your father and I do not have the words to say how blessed we have been over the years. Love you all. It makes me emotional even reading it to you. And my brother, who has a great way with words, said, Grandma, you're the best. You're blessed with a good family because you made it that way. So much of what's good about our family and our artistic talents, our good attitudes, our love of life can be traced back to the influence you had in our lives. We're the ones who are blessed to have been your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And I couldn't agree more with that. And so I just want to say thank you to the women of my life, but also thank you to you all. Because what you do makes a difference. And as you hear Mother Teresa's words, and we can all fall into the comparison game, and if you want to compare yourself to somebody and feel bad about yourself, Mother Teresa's a great choice. So this is not about comparing you to Mother Teresa. This is about hearing that love begins at home. And as we step forward in this, as we think about what love beginning at home looks like, and this other statement that you might be like, I don't like that second half as much. Love to be true has to hurt. What does that mean? We're going to talk about that today. But I want you to see the ways that it's not that love having to hurt is like inviting hurt into your life. It's that hurt is just a part of life in this world. And loving is about choosing hurt that makes the world a better place, okay? So,
Well, and when you think about it, we're
Right.
so inherently selfish, right? It can hurt to love somebody else because you have to be self-sacrificing
So true.
in order to love well.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for adding that, because that's really important. As we think about this is one of the things I've really learned from Stephanie. She's a really, really selfless person. She's going to love me. Yeah, like, you do that self-deprecating. No. But humility isn't looking down on yourself. This is somebody that I admire really a lot. And so being able to get to be up here with her and to raise those two sweet children with her and to do ministry with her and to go through this crazy adventure called life is just amazing to me. But there are ways and times that it hurts. We try to get through life with as little pain as possible sometimes, and that's just not in the cards. There's another example that I wanted to highlight that shows this, and this is not an example you want to follow like Mother Teresa, but this is a quote about someone's father that they made. Dad could talk about peace and love out loud to the world, but he could never show it to the people who supposedly meant the most to him, his wife and his son. How can you talk about peace and love and have a family in bits and pieces? No communication, adultery, divorce. You can't do it. Not if you're being true and honest with yourself. Does anybody know who said that? That was Julian Lennon, John Lennon's son, talking about his father. Now, I'm not bashing the Beatles. I love the Beatles, okay? Any Beatles fans are like, don't ruin the Beatles for me. I don't want to do that. But I just want to lift up this example as a way of saying, okay, what we talk about on Mother's Day is a choice. Choosing to invite love into your life is a way to invite risk. And it's not just about what you say. It's about what you do. And the way that my mother lived out her love in her life, the way that my wife lives out her love of me and her patience and putting up with me, and the ways that she embodies that is what matters most. And this is what we have in Jesus Christ, and this is what we have in the apostles. As we read through the book of Acts, we're here in this whole Holy Bible in a year series. And our reading for today drops us in a really funny place, because here in Acts, and especially starting with verse 11, we're in the middle of a big story, okay? And if you aren't following along, well, we'll catch you up. But I just want to encourage you to keep reading through the Holy Bible with us. It's never too late to pick it up, even if you have fallen off the wayside, or you didn't start with us, and maybe you're new here. You're like, I didn't know we were doing this. Well, pick it up. We're in Acts, okay? So in Acts 12, and starting with 11, we see this. Peter finally came to his senses. It's really true, he said. The Lord has sent his angel and saved me from Herod and from what the Jewish leaders had planned to do to me. When he realized this, he went to the home of Mary, the mother of John Mark, where there were many gathered for prayer. Okay, now, so to really understand what this is about, we have to go back. But what I want to highlight in this is that in this time, Mark goes home. Not necessarily to his home, but a home that was his home away from home. Because his really good friend, John Mark, which is the guy that wrote the book Mark, who got all the stories directly from Peter, he knows that he has a home with Mary, John Mark's mom. And so he goes with them knowing that they're going to be gathered praying. Why does he know that they're gathered praying? Well, probably because they do that all the time in that house. Because they didn't have churches like this building that we're here in today. They gathered in homes. And Mary was one of the several women, like Lydia, like many others in the book of Acts, that turned their home, didn't cease to be a home, but it started to be a church. Love starts at home, Mother Teresa says. And they're in this place where love hurts. Love to be true hurts. When you go back in Acts 12 to the first verse, you see why. About that time, Herod Agrippa, the king, began to persecute some of the believers in the church. He had the apostle James, John's brother, killed with a sword. When Herod saw how much this pleased the Jewish people, he also arrested Peter. We see Herod, who calls himself the king of the Jews, right? He sees that it's politically expedient for him at this point in history to start killing Christians, and he has no problem with that. You see, a few chapters back, you see Stephen, one of the leaders in the church who wasn't an apostle, is martyred, is put to death, he's stoned. And here you see the first of the 12 apostles Jesus walked around with being martyred, being put to death because of his faith. And you see how tragic this is. You see, I want you to imagine what it was like for the rest of them in that space to suddenly see, okay, now it's getting real. Now they're putting us to death for believing in Jesus. What does this mean for us? What do we do with this? And so in this story, how do the people respond? They respond by praying. They respond by turning over the things they can't control to God. They respond by taking up the things that they can control. There's a prayer like that. It's called the Serenity Prayer, right? And what we struggle with oftentimes the most is knowing what the difference is. And some of us just really won't relinquish control. But when we're in this place and we decide to let God be God, and we decide to do the thing that is our responsibility, you see us responding the way that these Christians are. And they go to God in prayer, knowing that God will deliver, knowing that even in the midst of facing death, very literally, that God is at work and alive. And this is one of the things I love about this story. So when you go to Acts 12, what you see is that Herod arrests Peter, and Herod intends to put him to death. And then what you see is that he locks Peter up, and he guards him like crazy. I don't know why, because they must have heard about that one time he cut off that servant's ear and in the Garden of Gethsemane. But he has 2 guards, one on each side, and then there's guards at the door too. And he's chained with 2 chains, and Peter's sleeping. And then an angel comes and smacks Peter. It says that. It hits Peter on the side, smacks Peter, says, "Get up, come on, let's go." And Peter thinks he's dreaming. That's why it says, when in that last part where it says Peter finally came to his senses, he doesn't realize he's actually talking to an angel. He doesn't realize he's actually walking out of the jail. He thinks, well, I must be having a dream. I must be having a vision. And then he comes to his senses and he goes, wow, God sent an angel. This is crazy. And then he runs over to where Mary lives and where John Mark and Rhoda and all these other people are there praying for his safety. Because the very next day is when Herod's going to put him to death. And this is a really powerful story, and I want you to see why. There's several things in this I don't want you to miss. God is moving, even when things don't seem like they're going our way. You might feel like that in your life now. You might feel like that in our culture right now. You might feel like that in your workplace right now. You might feel like that in your marriage right now. Things are not going my way. I want you to see from this story that God is moving even then. Even when it looks like the evidence is pointing to the contrary, God is always doing something. I want you to see this too. And this is about relinquishing control, as we talked about. I want to ask you the question. I want you to ask yourself, as you tell yourself the story of what's going on in your life right now, or the story that you have as you talk about your whole history, who gets the verbs in your story? Who's the acting person? Who's the subject of the sentences? Do you talk about the things that you do for God when you talk about your Christianity? Or do you talk about God doing things? Is God doing things through you? Are you doing things to earn God's favor? Are you doing things to prove to God that you're worthy? Now, when you think about this, I think there's something really beautiful in this story, because Peter's asleep at the beginning of the story, and then the whole rest of the story is half asleep. And so Peter's not the one that gets any credit for any of the things that have happened. God gets all the verbs in this story. God does things through the angels. And we get to participate in God's work. I think that's really cool, and it's a really important thing to think. In trying times, the faithful pray. I want you to see that this is the way they respond, and this is the way that we should respond to. There's nothing more important to us than the way that we lean into our relationship with God. And that's true when things are good. We should lean into God in prayer when things are good, but also and especially when things are hard. Draw near to God, Scripture says, and He will draw near to you. Stronger families are bigger and more inclusive than biology. As you think about this family here, right? Peter's not related to any of these people biologically, as far as I know, but it's a big table. They have an open door. There are people that they're related to by blood, and there's people there that are just there because, hey, when you're here, you're family. We always used to say that at Hope Des Moines before it was Hope Elam. We kind of stole it from Olive Garden, but we would say, well, we don't care. We like it, so we still good stuff. So we would say, when you're here, does John still say that? So I don't know if he says that still. But he used to say every week, hey, when you're here, your family. And I don't even think Olive Garden's moved on, but I haven't, because I think it's great. That's one of the things I love about my grandparents, too. I read that text from my grandma. My grandparents have this really open door. Whenever one of us, the cousins, the kids, the grandkids, the whoever it was, would bring into the family at Christmas or Thanksgiving or Easter, they would bring a boyfriend or a girlfriend over, somebody. A lot of them were really questionable choices, okay? We just got to say, over the years, I'm not saying that about anybody presently, okay? My grandparents were so gracious, and they made space for everybody. And that's the kind of house I want to have. I learned that from them. This is really important. Strong families are bigger, and they're bigger than biology, too. You are the church when you're in your home. Don't ever think that church is what you do, and especially don't think that church is what you do when you're in this building. Church is what you do when you're out of this building, and being in this building is a way of equipping you. And I want you to see how important this is. I want to see how critical this is. This is absolutely essential, because that world is dying for us to be the church. We need to be the church because the world really needs us, and we need to be the church in a more real way than we've been so far. I'm not trying to badmouth us. I'm not talking about hope. I'm saying we need to grow in our faith and get better at making disciples. And I'm talking about me first. We need to do a better job of making disciples. Mother Teresa was asked by a reporter in the 70s, you've been to all these different countries. What's the poorest countries you've ever been to? And Mother Teresa said, I've seen people in the deepest poverty. I've seen people that have nothing. And the poorest country that I've ever been to is America. And the reporter was taken aback. They didn't know what to say. What do you mean by that? Mother Teresa said, in America, you have the poverty of loneliness. And that was in the 1970s. I don't know if you watched the news. The Surgeon General finally caught up to the trend and realized that we are in the midst of an epidemic of loneliness. That's what the Surgeon General says. I think this is really true. This is really true because of this finding here that I took from the Surgeon General's report. That lacking social connection is as dangerous as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. And more people are saying, this is where they're at. This is the reality in which they live. And we got to fix that. We got to do something about that. And I think that's why God gave us the church, to deal with this. That's a really important way, a really important reason that God made us a community. So, don't you think?
Yes, I do think. I almost wish they didn't use the word social, because obviously social media doesn't count, right? Social
Right.
media isn't social connection, really helping us grow and feel better and less alone. It more so isolates us. And so that's one thing I would change about that slide. But when I think about the epidemic of loneliness, when I think about the poverty of loneliness, and when I think about Mother Teresa saying we've got to love until it hurts, it's really hard to think about, and it's really convicting. I would say that I am a semi-recovering people pleaser, super codependent, semi-recovering because I have to work on it so hard all the time. I just want people to be happy, and I just want people to love me. And when I grew up, I heard that loud and clear. And what that turned into was, okay, I have this huge fear that I am not enough, that I am not lovable, right? And so what that now looks like is I'm just gonna do what everybody wants, whenever they want it, and I'll just do that, and then maybe they'll like me, and I'll be okay, and I won't be alone, right? And so I thought and felt like I was loving these people so well, and I am loving them till they hurt, or till really I hurt, because I had a lot of hurt in relationships like that. And then I found that it wasn't working, right? And so as I grew up and got a little bit older and got into adulthood, I realized I was really listening to the world, and I was really listening to shame. So I marry Ben, get a little bit wiser, and
In spite of me.
right, yeah, no.
Yeah.
And things start to change a little bit. I'm working so hard, I feel like, on listening to God. Really working hard. But the world and shame has a way of getting louder and louder. And this happens a lot when different things happen in our lives. So for me, it got louder and louder when I really struggled to get pregnant, right? And then once I finally got pregnant and I lost my baby, it got real loud again. I started doubting everything. I was a girl who, you asked me what was my dream job when I grew up. It was always, I just want to be a mom. Like, that's all I want, is to be a mom. And these things were happening, and all I thought is, God doesn't want me to be a mom. I'm not good enough. I can't be a mom. He doesn't trust me with kids. Like, I did something wrong. There's something wrong with me. And so shame got louder and louder. And then I got blessed with these two beautiful children who I don't think are paying a lick of attention. Imagine that. And I was overjoyed. But at the same time, I know some of you maybe feel this way. As a mom, the world and shame gets so loud sometimes, so loud. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, all I want to be is a good mom. All I want to be is a good mom. And shame just keeps whispering, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. You're never going to be good enough, right? So Ben and I have the privilege to also do a lot of marriage and parenting type ministry around here, mostly marriage. And we just finished up another pre-marriage class. And in that class, we have a couple TED Talks by Brené Brown. She is one of our favorite authors and speakers and has a lot to say about vulnerability and shame. And as I was sitting in our pre-marriage class, supposed to be focusing on these beautiful couples who are entering this major, incredible journey in their life, I'm selfishly thinking about what she is saying, and it's just hitting me in a different way this time. So one of the things that Brené Brown says is what shame tells us. And shame tells us the same message to everybody all the time, and it's you are not enough. And if you can actually talk shame out of that message, the following message is, who do you think you are? Now, she continued to do more research, and she found that the message that the world gives us to give us this specific message, or not this specific message, but that specific message, looks a little bit different for men and women. Okay, so for women, that message comes across is do it all, do it perfectly, and never let them see you sweat. And for men, that message is don't ever let them perceive you as weak, no matter what. Okay, so those are the two messages that the world is telling us. And I was sitting there in that class, And I thought to myself, very sarcastically, I can be a pretty sarcastic person, kind of laughing, but thinking this is so true. Like, I'm pretty sure that's like the definition of motherhood. Do it all, do it perfectly, and never let them see you sweat. But I'm sitting here going, like, I can never do it all. I don't do it perfectly, and I'm like drenched in sweat all the time. Like, this is just so unrealistic, and I find myself listening to shame once again. And in our house, we joke a lot about exposure therapy. And we joke a lot about mom's psychosis is showing. And so I had one of those moments. Like, let's be honest, I probably have those moments almost every day. There are countless times, but one of the most recent times was a couple weeks ago. I'm in a lovely small group made up of wonderful women, but half of us live in West Des Moines and half of us live in Indianola, so sometimes we have some travel. And it's May. You all know, it's May. May is crazy. There's so much going on. There's much going on at work, so much going on at home, all these different things. So I get off of work, and it goes like this. So I have all the things from work still in my head, still trying to work those out. What am I going to do tomorrow? How am I going to get all that done? And I'm slowly switching gears while keeping that ticker tape running in my head to like, okay, tonight is Bible study night, so I need to get home. I need to pick up the kids. I need to clean out the backpacks. I need to check Lydia's calendar, make sure that I sign her calendar so that she gets credit for that. But then I also need to make sure she has homework or not so that Ben knows whether or not he needs to do homework with her. I need to clean the lunch boxes. I need to pack the lunches. I need to make sure dinner's ready so Ben doesn't have to worry about dinner, so he can just focus on the kids and I can go to Bible study. So do it all, do it perfectly. Don't let him see you sweat. Get it fairly okay done. Get in the car, head off to Bible study. Bible study is great, but my Bible study, again, has these glorious women who are like me. And so I come home a little tired, and I drove all the way to Indianola, and I walk into the house, and I'm like, it's kind of quiet, but then I hear the pound, 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 pound. Children should totally be asleep, but I know this is cute. They heard that I'm home. They were just going to come give me a hug. Okay, give me hugs. Okay, go up to bed. Ben, nowhere to be found. Walk like kind of through the kitchen, like, oh, and then walk around the corner to see the living room, and I just feel like I'm standing in chaos, and my anxiety is increasing, and I'm getting overwhelmed, and I'm also one of these people that can't relax unless the chaos is at least somewhat orderly. Like, there's just no way. I can't sit, I can't do it. And so here I go, listening to shame as I start picking things up and start figuring out and start feeling how tired I am and start feeling how overwhelmed I am and how much I feel like I need to get done and how I am failing at being a mom. And then I realize that, man, that's a lie. That's like a big fat lie that I can't stop myself from believing and can't stop myself from hearing. And I realized that lie is causing me to tear myself down, and it's causing me to tear my marriage down, which we'll get to in a minute. And it's causing me to tear every relationship I have down because of the way I'm feeling, because I feel like I'm not enough, and I'm hearing it over and over and over again. And I just feel like we've got to change that. We've got to figure out a way to combat the lie. We've got to figure out a way to open up and to be vulnerable. And what we have to do is we have to really, really, really lean into God and who He says we are. We have to lean into our faith, because with God, there is no shame. And with God, we don't have to be imperfect. In fact, He knows we're not perfect. We're not expected to be perfect, right? And for our guys and gals too, God's power is made perfect in our weakness, right? Who doesn't want to make God even better and shine that light? So God's power is made perfect in our weakness. And God gives us, believe it or not, the gift of limits, right? I'm going to say that again. It is a gift that God gives us, and He gives us limits. Not a single one of us can do it all, and nor should we, because that's not how we were designed, right? If we are really going to love until it hurts, we got to let God do it. And we got to let God use us and do that through us. Now, I have to say that I'm also one of those people that is really good at like kind of flinging blame everywhere I go, right? So back to this story and back to like tearing down marriages. So I'm picking up all of the things. Pretty much realized by now that after my husband has had the day off of work, because it's Monday, not that he doesn't work really hard, but this is my selfish brain. Knowing he had the whole day off without the kids. I have days off too, but I kind of always want the kids. So he has a day off with no kids. And yeah, he had to work with the kids at night and stuff for a little bit while I was at Bible study. But now he's just up there like tinkering with all his toys and doing another project. And here I am. Like, I'm so overwhelmed. And I'm getting angry. And I'm getting resentful as I pick up and pick up and pick up. Start working. Like, some of it gets louder as I start, like, putting things down. Pastor, bless his heart, like, has no idea. This man can focus like I've never seen.
Totally clueless,
right.
Okay? So, yeah, I have this gift of, like, focusing on things. And I focus, and I don't even see what she sees. And that's one of the things, even as she tells the story now, what I feel is shame.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not of God either. But as you keep telling this story, right, what my shame does and what her shame does is the same. It drives us apart.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes me think, again, just more lies. Like, there's the big lie that I'm not enough. But there's also the lie that's like, I guess he doesn't care. Or, I guess after 20 years of marriage, not to mention the 7 years of dating, he still doesn't know me. He still doesn't know that I need a clean house. He still doesn't know, he doesn't care enough to notice or have the kids help or what. All of these things that are going on in my head that have not a lick of truth to them. And that's what gets in the way, right? That's what gets in the way. And so I realize as I'm doing this that, I am actually responsible for my feelings and my attitudes and my behaviors. I didn't walk in the house and somebody tell me, you better pick up all this stuff. That's what I told myself, right? And I kind of let my feelings drive a little bit. And I had to check myself and realize, wait a second, I am responsible for this. I am responsible for how I'm feeling. I'm responsible for what is going on because what I need is rest. And I'm blaming my husband because I feel like he's getting it and I'm not. But all I had to do was just walk upstairs and say, hey, honey, can I have some help? Like, that's all I had to say. But that's not what I did.
And at that point, I would have been, yeah, absolutely. Why don't you rest? I'll go pick up the things. I've had the day off. It wasn't from a callous place or a selfish place. I put the kids to bed. I literally did not walk downstairs into our living room after doing so, and didn't really have an awareness of the mess. Not saying I shouldn't have. I should just. But in that place, I just don't see things the same way that she does.
My whole family, like, I'm the only one that sees it that way.
Well, and here's the thing. Even after 20 years of marriage, shocker of shockers, you still can't read each other's minds. You feel like you have to, and that creates another shame thing. Where, I should know what you want without you saying so. Because we finish each other's sentences. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
No. You prove my point. Like, you don't know what I'm thinking right now, what I'm going to say next. And that's just part of preaching with me. I don't even know what I'm going to say next. But at the same time, when we are in this place, we have to remember that shame keeps us apart. And really sharing who we are with each other draws us together. Sharing your heart with somebody you love. And that's part of the way that love starts at home. The people that you share your heart with, those are the people you love, and those are the people that love you. And for love to be true, it also ends up hurting. Sometimes we fail each other. And this is one of the things that is important to keep in mind too. But with this, right, we need to remember that with God, there is no shame. With God, we don't have to be perfect. I want you to understand what the world invites us to is different than what God invites us to, right?
Right. And God invites us to love each other until it hurts and to be loved until it hurts, right? Because God tells us not only are you enough, you are more than enough because you are mine. And we define ourselves by who God created us to be and whose we are, that we are God's, and that changes the whole perspective.
Right. So what the world invites us to is its community that it creates based on our own deserving. The community the world builds is based on what you can offer the world. It wants you to know that you have to earn your place. Are you good enough to be a part of our community? Are you on our team? Did you make the cut? This is the kind of community the world builds. And it's not the kind of community that God builds. It's almost as if Jesus, when he picked out his disciples, went looking for the most unqualified people. Doesn't it feel like that to you? That's how it feels to me, which I find really encouraging, okay? If you don't find that encouraging, you're obviously more qualified to be up here than me. But I find it really encouraging because God goes and finds the least qualified people. He's like, hey, you want to be my disciple? And it's like, I was just fishing over here. Follow me. Hey, you want to be my disciple? I'm a tax collector. Yeah, I know. Come follow me. Like, okay. I don't know anything about what are we even doing. And they go and they follow. The kind of community God invites us into is completely different, right? God invites us into a community that's based not on our deserving, not on what we can offer God, but is based on his unfailing love and God's amazing grace. So as we talk about community, right, we're talking about mothers and we're talking about home life, we're talking about the things that you do for people, none of that is your identity. The thing with motherhood is it becomes an identity. And it's really important. Motherhood is amazingly important, okay? But it still is not important enough to be your identity. And I want to say that to you if you are a mother. Because this is a temptation for you. Motherhood is not your identity. And I want you to hear this if you've always wanted to be a mother and never got the chance to be. Motherhood is not your identity. You're a child of God. First, middle, and last, you're a child of God. You are chosen. You're called by name. There's this beautiful verse that I love that I put in half my sermons probably. It feels like I'm like, I shouldn't read this. No, I'm going to read it anyway. Because I love it that much. It's Zephaniah 3:17. Okay? For the Lord your God is living among you. He is a mighty Savior. He will take delight in you with gladness. With his love, he will calm all your fears. He will rejoice over you with joyful songs. And I love this verse because it says, he takes delight in you with gladness. Like it could say he takes delight in you, and that would be enough. But the redundancy is beautiful in the New Living Translation. He takes delight in you. How? With gladness. He will rejoice over you with joyful songs. Again, the redundancy is beautiful. But the image I have in my head is the times when I could actually hold those wiggly stinkers tight enough that they couldn't wiggle. And I sang joyful songs over them. As you think about what it means to be a child of God, as you think about what it means to be a mother, I want you to separate the root from the fruit. Where does the energy come from? And then where does the energy go? See, a lot of us are trying to live in our marriages. A lot of us are trying to live as mothers and as fathers. A lot of us are doing our work at work or ministry, trying to get energy from those things. It's not going to be a source. It's not a good root. Jesus is the root. Jesus is the vine, he says. And out of that root comes tremendous fruit, which is the motherhood of my wonderful wife, which is the motherhood of my mother and my grandmother, and so many other women in my life, and so many of the women I see in this room. Don't confuse the root with the fruit, right? Because God invites you into a community that you have to do absolutely nothing to be a part of. Ask yourself, who gets the verbs? in my life? Who gets the verbs in my parenting? Who gets the verbs? Well, when it comes to me not seeing my wife's feelings, I get the verbs, right? When it comes to me serving my wife the way that I should, it ends up that God gets the verbs. And so we want to end with a prayer, okay? And we're going to take it back to Mother Teresa. That clip that we had at the beginning was from her Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech. It's beautiful. She talks about the things that she's done in a really humble way, and she uses it as an opportunity to challenge the people that are there, who are there obviously from all walks of life, from different countries around the world, some Christians, some not. And the way she starts it is with this prayer. And this is about being tied to the root that bears good fruit. And I want you to come back next week, because we're going to talk more about community in our sermon next week. Not my sermon. I don't even know who's preaching next week. But I know what's
Not
on
me.
I know what's on the preaching schedule, okay? But what we're going to do is we're going to pray a prayer. And Mother Teresa is going to lead us. She doesn't know we're doing this. Well, she probably does. She's in heaven. But when she gets ready to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, what she does is she passes out on paper St. Francis's prayer, okay? Now, we're not Catholics. I don't pray to saints. I'm not saying you should either. But they are people to look up to, okay? And this prayer was written by St. Francis as a way to connect himself with a root and anticipate the fruit that will come out of that connection. So we're going to say it together, the words of St. Francis's prayer. She'll start out, and then she'll lead us, and you'll hear us read along with her. So join us in prayer, please.
I think you have all got a paper with you. We'll say it together.
Lord, make me a channel of your peace,
that where there is hatred, I may bring love. That where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness. That where there is discord, I may bring harmony. That where there is error, I may bring truth. That where there is doubt, I may bring faith. That where there is despair, I may bring hope. That where there are shadows, I may bring light. That where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by forgetting self that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen.
That's my prayer for you, that God would grant that. Notice it starts with God grant. It's asking God to move, because he gets the verbs. He's moving in your life. And that is going to be the fruit of this church. It already is. That's going to be the fruit of your family and your life. Please join us in worship.